So in this tutorial we're going to be looking at setting up light maps for modular scenes. So the first thing we want to do is open the modular mayor file, and all we have in here is just the most basic kind of modular piece you can get. So if we look at the unwrap, we can see that what we have is our two main faces here, so these can just have a tiling texture on them. And then we have our four edge pieces, and they're just going to use this part of the normal map. So we can see we've got some overlapping here. So these overlap with this, and obviously these two main faces overlap too. So it's not, although this UVSet is not going to be suitable for use with a light map. So let's export this first, and we're just going to export it as modular piece 1. So we'll export this and then jump into UE4, and we'll import this straight into here. Make sure that all of these should be alright. To be fair, we haven't got any materials and textures, and we're only importing one mesh, so this doesn't matter either. So we'll import our wall piece into here, and just make sure you've got your grid visible as well. And you want to make sure this is set to 128. Now the reason this is set to 128 is because our modular piece is 128 units in width and height. If you're in not in Power of 2, just go to Edit, Editor Preferences, Viewports, and just tick on Use Power of 2 Snap Size, and just hit Set as Default. So we'll drag a piece into the scene, and then we'll just hit this little yellow box here. And the reason we're doing that is to centre it on the world. Now if you hold down Alt and just drag, I'm just going to delete that out actually and just turn on snap with this option here. Now I can just pull this across, and then hold shift to select those three, and again just hold X, press spacebar to go to rotate, and just rotate this 90 degrees. And then we'll press W to go to move, hold Alt again and just drag this along to here. Spacebar to go to rotate, and again to rotate that 90 degrees. Back to move mode with W, hold Alt, drag down, spacebar to rotate, and rotate 90 degrees. We'll need to clone this piece one more time. Press spacebar and just rotate that 90 degrees. You can see we're making the most kind of basic environment you could have, basic modular environment. Hold Alt and just clone that one as well. So we've got a nice kind of sealed in box. I suppose technically with this piece we should rotate it 180 degrees and snap it onto there, just so the walls are okay like that. Okay, so next we're going to need some lights, so let's just drag in point light into here, and we'll turn off snap and just position this roughly where we want it to go. And I'm going to shrink down the radius as well, something like 200, and we'll hold Alt and clone this. Over to here as well. I think I'm going to bring them down again, maybe to like that, so we've got a bit of shading and a bit that's kind of fully lit as well. Okay, so we've got a good enough testing scene. One thing to bear in mind is if you're using movable lights, it isn't going to bake light maps for you. Another thing to do is just go to your top view and just make sure that everything is definitely snapped okay. So we can see here I'm probably done just a slight miscalculation with this. So we'll just go to vertex, select these vertices, press W to go to move mode, hold X to snap to grid, just drag that on. Go to front view and make sure that that is perfectly in the square there as well. And as we can see at the top that isn't. So again, hold X and just snap down. So now that's perfectly fitting into the 128. 1:8 grid space, so we shouldn't have that obvious kind of flicker going on with the overlap. To re-import it, just right click and go to re-import. Now we should see, when we go to our top view, you see how it's all kind of nicely aligned. So that's how to tell if your modular pieces are fitting together well. This little glitch down here, that's just a grid, so if I just go show, turn off the grid there. Okay, so that's our modular scene, and without lighting baked, it looks okay, and that's because there's no light maps on this until we bake. So to bake, what we need to do is go to build and just hit that. Okay, so the first one we have here is some Lightmap UVs are overlapping by 53%. So it's saying that our Lightmap UVs are overlapping and there's tons of errors. So let's fix that problem. What we're going to do, by the way, is work through each of our points that we've seen on the presentation. So the first one we see is no overlapping UVs. And that was the problem that we were getting in here. So let's just double click on our model, and if we scroll down we can see that our model is using Lightmap coordinate index 0, so that means it's using these exact UVs for the Lightmap. Now obviously that's not what we want. We know that this needs to not be overlaying, and these are overlaid. So let's make a new UV set in Maya. So we'll go to create UVs, UVSet editor, and we'll go to select this one and go to copy. So there's our new one. And let's rename this one Lightmap and just hit close. So now if we go to Lightmap here, you can see they're both the same, but we have two UV sets. So make sure you're working on Lightmap, and we'll select all the faces in our model and go to edit UVs, create UVs, automatic mapping. And that will give an attempt at laying these out. Okay, so if we just go back to our checklist, we've sorted this problem out. So let's just highlight that in green. So the next thing we need to do is the padding between the islands. As you can see, there's no gap between these at all. So let's just select them all and just shrink them down a bit, and then we can separate these like so. That's already given us a kind of larger padding between these. Now the next thing is islands should be placed on grid where possible. So we need to sort this one out now. Now based on the size of our light map is the size that our grid needs to be. And you have to do a little formula to figure that out, but something I've included in the presentation is if you're going to have a light map of 1:8, you need your grid spacing to be this. So let's copy that, jump back into here and go to View, Grid, Options, and we'll paste this. Well, I can't seem to paste that, so I might just try again. Try copying. If not, we'll just have to type that in by hand. Okay, so I'm going to have to type that in by hand. And we hit apply. We can see we've now got numerous grid squares. Now the reason this is helpful is because we can go to shell, press D and V and snap this on, and if we hold down X you can snap to grid. Now one thing we want to make sure here, so hold shift, control, right click to shell, D and V to move, and we can just move this up. Hold X, you can snap to grid. So we'll want to make sure that these also snap to the grid. Now I'm not being too kind of precise with this. I could be a lot more precise, but since and make better use of the space, I could potentially scale these up even further. But just for this example, I want to kind of hurry this along a bit, so that's why I'm not being quite as precise as I could be. But just notice how I'm holding down X and just snapping each line to the grid. And I'm leaving just 4 grid spaces in between. Okay, so now if we just check our Lightmap rules. Okay, you can see we've done these 3 fine now. Now another one we're going to deal with is this one, but first of all we're going to do all these in UE4. So the first one is we need, well, first of all let's export this. So we do File, Export Selection, Modular Piece 1, and then we'll jump into Unreal and re-import. So if we want to check that that's come in okay, we can just go to double click on the model and check UV channel 1, just tick that on, and you can see that that's come in okay. So we need to set our Lightmap resolution to 128 and put our coordinate index onto 1 because that's what we're using in Maya. So once we've done that, we can hit save and just shut that down. So hopefully when we rebuild we should get a much better result. So we'll just let that build. And we can already see that is now kind of vastly improved. Now if we just set this to lighting only, we can see there's a few tiny errors, and one thing I was doing was building on production. So I'm just going to build this on preview and we should see that there's quite a few more errors, which is probably what you've got. Okay, so we're getting a few kind of little seams around here. It's not looking too bad. So let's go back into our checklist and add some more stuff in. So the first thing we want is a Lightmass importance volume. So to do that we go to volumes, go to Lightmass importance volume, and we'll just go to our top view because it's much easier to initially set this up in the top view. Now if we go to scale mode, just scale this out, and all you need to do is make sure this encompasses the entire scene. And basically what this does is it means that UE4 will, when it's baking the lighting, will prioritise this small area here rather than putting all of its resources into the entire scene, this massive world. So it's really important to use one of these. Okay, so we've considered Lightmap resolution, and we've considered that, although the only way we've really changed it is by setting this from preview to production. Other little things we can do, if we go to world settings, if you set your indirect lighting quality to 0.6, Epic advise that that is a more suitable setting for quality, although it will increase your bake time. Sorry, actually that's wrong. This is what the smoothness should be set to 0.6, and this should be set from 1 to or even 3 or 4. Okay, so we're now following kind of most of the rules in this. We can highlight that one as well. The only one here is areas where models meet should be attached together as one model. So let's just fix that one as well. So at the moment we've just got this one modular piece. So let's hold X and just move that over here, and then use Control and D to copy that and snap it back over here. What we're going to do is just copy this 3 times because we know our wall is 3 pieces long. So we'll select these, go to Combine, and what we'll need to do is get these 2 inside faces. So I'm just going to select these and then hold Control and just minus off those off the selection and delete those out. So another thing we'll need to do is weld the verts together, because you can see you can actually pull this apart. So just select all the vertices, hold Shift, right click, go to Merge Vertices here, and I'm just going to set this to 0.1 and hit Apply. You can test to see if this works just by selecting one vert like that. Okay, so what we've made here now is a nice modular section to go along here and here and here and here. And then we'll use the original one for the end cap. Now what this will be able to do is use the same texture here and here and on this, so you're still getting the modularity from your textures, but we will need to change our light map, because now what we have is some of these are overlapping. So what we need to do is select the faces in this middle one, and we'll move those out. We'll select the faces in this one and move those out as well. And what we want to do is now get these into some form of square. And we'll shrink this down and fit it into our window. Now what we will need to do again is actually hold down X, move our pivot with D and V, and hold down X to snap. Now one little tool you can try here actually, if you just select all of this and go to polygons, make sure your grid is set to the size of your light map and hit apply, and that will actually snap all of these onto the grid. So you can see that's much easier. Now what this will do though is only snap like your top left pixel, so if these aren't aligned to the grid they're not going to align, but it's perfect in this case. It hasn't done this one because this one was outside our UV window. We'll pull that in, and now let's try exporting this. So we'll do File, Export Selection. We'll do this as modular piece 2. We'll jump into Unreal, and what we're going to do is delete out our walls here. We're not going to delete our light mass importance volume. We'll import our wall and put this onto the centre of the world. We'll just follow exactly the same process we did before. We'll clone that up, turn on our grid snap and make our grid visible. Hold Alt, snap that and rotate it. Again, just rotate. Okay, so now we have our combined model in the scene. If we check our UVs, Yeah, that's what we want. Make sure you set your light map resolution to 128. Now we might want to increase this to 256 since we have a larger model here. So let's set our lighting quality. We'll leave it on preview for now just to make this quicker. Then we'll build our lighting again. So while that's building, I can jump back in here and we can see we've fulfilled the last rule. Okay, so make sure you turn off the grid display. You should see now we've got a really nice kind of lighting bake. Now one thing to bear in mind is we're using stationary lights here. Now these bake light maps, but can also but part of the lighting is dynamic. So if we set these to static lights, then these will just generate light maps, and these can be really useful as ambient lights. So not lights that cast this kind of really direct light, but a light with a really low value of intensity. You know, something like 200, but quite a high radius. That can create that nice ambient light. Whereas this light can be set to stationary, but it can do things like change colour and stuff like that. So let's try dropping a box into our scene. I'll shrink this down a fair amount. The reason I'm putting this in the scene is because it's something that can generate actual shadows. So let's turn off snap, and we can move this out. Hold Alt and we'll just clone this over here as well. Okay, so we've got stationary light there and we've got our static light here. So let's try, we've got our nice walls all set here. We've got our two end pieces, so we've pretty much followed everything that we need to. So let's just hit build on this. We should find now we've got a really nice light and bake. Still got a few minor problems, so let's just set this now to production, hit build. And you can see this is taking longer because we're building on production quality lighting now. There we go, we can see now we've got a nice quality light bake. The boxes are a little knackered, but that's because they're the things that we haven't sorted out. Just one of those for the shadows on the walls. One last thing to show you is if you actually have some kind of material on this, those little lighting problems, if there are any, are much more hidden once you've got some complicated stuff going on. See, we've got some nice shadows there and so on. So yeah, I think that's the key to this. Take your time with it, make sure you go through all the rules. One thing I don't mention on here is in the rules is making sure you've got some thickness to your assets, but you should have done that in the modelling phase anyway. So hopefully that's all you need to get through Lightmaps.